But at this point, we've already established that we don't need all of a child's information the exact second they register for camp, right? There is indeed an element, though, of time criticality at play when it comes to collecting and reviewing all the information you need before camp starts. So, the main idea I want to share with you here is that if you wait until check-in in particular to start reviewing information, you're going to be doing yourself a great disservice because in doing so, we're creating what we call a blind spot. But what exactly do we mean by that? And what tends to happen when teams don't review this information a little bit further in advance than they'd like? Well, waiting until arrival day in particular can lead to some interesting surprises, to say the least. And oftentimes, these are situations you don't want to be dealing with when you're surrounded by all the other chaos involved in day one of a program. So let's unpack what this means a little bit. You see, the types of surprise you're likely to encounter on check-in day is going to depend on what things look like for you prior to check-in day, right? So for instance, let's say your families usually fill out forms on paper or on a fillable PDF on your website, right? And you see them for the very first time. Your staff is finally reviewing them for the first time at check-in. In this case, your staff is going to be rapidly scanning through this information when people do arrive on site. And there are a few key items that can often catch us off guard. First is the one that it looks like you all avoided by staying away from paper, which is great, right? We've moved away from illegible handwriting. That way we don't have to decipher what's actually being written. So that's step one. Step two that we often look at is incomplete information. This is one I hear about all the time, right? We're missing either a few lines of data, maybe a whole page of information, and we need to decide what we actually do about it while we're on site. And last but not least, this is something new too, information that's maybe a little bit out of the norm. So perhaps a child with more complex medical needs than our staff are used to handling, or even a kid whose activity limitations don't align super well with their specific camp schedule. And as many of you know, many of those surprises also don't go away when we stop using paper, right? They prevail in different ways. And these costs of the late discoveries, well, they're plenty. And a worst case scenario can result in a mix of unnecessary staff stress, last minute refunds, a break in family trust, or even reputational risk, which is all what we're hoping to avoid here. So, one scenario that I want to bring up that I've heard a couple too many times is what happens when a child arrives with needs that we simply can't meet? Needs that we might have known about in advance, but just simply didn't this time around. Well, if we turn that child away at the door, we're going to hit on all four of those costs we talked about, right? Staff is going to be stressed out, and that's not great on day one when they're trying to focus on other initiatives. Two, family trust and reputational risk could be at jeopardy here. But also, what's important is that depending on your policies, we could see some financial implications, just based on if we need to issue a last minute refund. We might not get another camper in that spot to fill that void. All that to say, this isn't the sort of start that we want to a new program. And thankfully, there are quite a few strategies we have to help you avoid that. So, Jason, this is where I turn things back to you. For teams that are already running a strong registration process in Traction Rack, how do they typically manage families who delay completing their forms, regardless of when we want to review them?
Yeah. So we have a few concepts and features that we use to manage this. So we highly encourage, just like I mentioned earlier, getting those questions out of the way of a parent really securing their spot and handing you their money, right? Make it easy for them to give you their money and secure that spot in camp or in a childcare program. So the fewer the questions that get in the way of that credit card or ACH, the better. But once they hit pay now, that's kind of where the fun begins, right? First step is setting very clear expectations. So, an immediate confirmation email, or better yet, a text message. We know in today's world, not everybody reads their email, but you send them a text, they are seeing that message right away. But that email or text with next steps and a clear timeline is critical. You have to communicate why you need the form early and how they can be completed, and make that next step of actually completing it simple as well. In Traction Rec, we have a few tools available to do this. We can, like I said, get that form out of the way of the transaction. So immediately after the transaction, we can send them an email or a text message that says, hey, here's where you need to complete your form. And you have some controls over how long they have to fill that out. So maybe right after the transaction, they have 14 days to complete it, or a month after the transaction, or maybe regardless of when they register, you want to give everybody a hard cutoff. So maybe May 15th is that hard cutoff. So whether they register in January or in April, they all have the same deadline of May 15th. From there, we encourage folks to set up a countdown dashboard. And this is valuable whether you're doing it in Traction Rec or in CampDoc, right? A countdown dashboard that tells you how many registrations you have and how many still have outstanding forms remaining so that staff can work on bringing that number down to zero as early as possible and definitely before the start of camp.